The Trick-or-Treater. Well, about 2 years ago, I had my only unpleasant experience ever with the Trick-or-Treater. It doesn't really bother me to talk about it anymore, and I'm more than happy to share it with your listeners. I like spooky stories, and I like your orange tabby that you call your mascot, so I hope your listeners will enjoy this tale. I can honestly tell you, I did not enjoy it when it happened to me. I'm an 83-year-old widow. Although I miss my husband greatly, when he died a few years ago, I was determined to not become one of those senior citizens who lose their identity when they lose their spouse. My husband and I were married for 52 years, and he was indeed my entire life. But after he passed, I was able to find new things in life that I could identify with. I was successful in finding new hobbies and making new connections with people. One of the things I found I enjoy more than anything is interacting with trick-or-treaters on Halloween. I have more than a substantial nest egg, and I'm able to afford just about anything I want. So when Halloween comes around, I go all out with my candy. I'm sure if you've been trick-or-treating, you have been happy to find those houses that give away miniature or bite-sized candy bars. Kids always love those. Well, I put those in the dust. I give out regular full-size candy bars. You name them. I got Reese's peanut butter cups, full bags of M&Ms, Milky Ways, and the most popular of all, Snickers bars. Oh, nothing makes me happier than seeing the looks on children's faces, or imagining them under their masks, when I give them the best trick-or-treat candy in the entire neighborhood. Now, on the Halloween night of my story, it was a pretty typical for a Halloween night. I had tons of candy and what seemed to be an endless supply of children stopping by my home for candy bars. Although I did give the full bars out, it was known in the neighborhood that I had a strict policy of 1 bar per trick-or-treater. All the children knew this, also, and no one ever tried to get more than one. Well, as the night went on, for the first time ever, I was positive that I saw a child come back for another piece of candy with a second group of children. Sure, children do wear similar costumes, but everything about this child seemed to indicate that I'd seen him before. His costume was a melange of characters. He was short, about 4 foot tall. He had on a hockey mask, a pirate costume, and he carried his plastic jack-o'-lantern with what looked like a really cheaply made Freddy Krueger glove. It was unlikely that any 2 children would have constructed the exact same makeshift costume. Well, this was the first time in years that I actually had a trick-or-treater try to cheat the system and get a piece of candy. I let it slide and gave the lad a second bar. It was quite possible that it was a different kid and the costume was some sort of trend or based on some new scary movie character I didn't know about. Honestly, Jason from Friday the 13th, I don't remember his last name, and Freddy Krueger are the 2 most modern characters I know about anyway. I was in my 50s when those movies came out. I didn't keep up with horror as time went by. About 20 minutes after the boy came back for his second bar of candy, though, I noticed a child that seemed identical to him come back for a third bar. This time I was positive it was the same kid as before. He was yet again with a different group of kids, and he was carrying the exact same purple jack-o'-lantern bucket that he had the previous 2 times. When he came up to me, I looked inside, and I saw 2 full-size candy bars in the bucket. "Now, young man, I already broke my rule for you and gave you an extra candy bar." I wagged my finger at him. "It wouldn't be fair if I gave you another now, would it?" The boy didn't answer. He just continued to hold his bucket out, expecting a third piece of candy. When I told him I couldn't give him another bar because it would not be fair to all the other children who were only getting 1, the boy set his pumpkin down on the porch. He then took his hand with the Freddy Krueger glove and brandished the blades at me. He waved the individual fingers at me. "Now, no need to get like that," I told the boy. "You've already got 2 candy bars, now run along, little boy." He paused for a moment. Then the boy took his hand, and he actually swiped the Freddy Krueger glove at me. It caught me on the arm, and it actually cut me, although he didn't get me very deep. The cheap glove looked so cheap because it was likely a real one that he had made himself with real knives. I screamed in fear and pain and dropped the bowl of candy on the ground. As I grabbed my arm, the boy began scooping the candy out of my bowl and putting it in his bucket. After finishing taking all of the bars, he looked at me, lifted his mask up, and he wasn't a child at all. He was a short man, unshaved, and likely in his 40s. He smiled at me, and he had at least one gold-capped tooth in his smile. Then he lowered his mask down and ran off. Well, the cuts were superficial, so that was good, but the experience itself was rather traumatic. Fortunately, the police did catch the guy. He had done this before in other houses, in other towns, so I was lucky that way. I guess when you're short with one gold tooth in a small town, you sort of stand out in a crowd. I don't know. But they caught him, and I'm happier that way. And I still give out candy bars, and I still enjoy trick-or-treaters. However, now if someone asks me for a second bar, I just give it to him. Ghost in the Graveyard. I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday of the year without question. I enjoy everything about it. I like ghost stories, monsters, scary movies, and I love graveyards. Well, at least I used to love graveyards. Back in high school, I had an experience that soured me just a little bit on cemeteries. During October, I used to always play a game of hide-and-seek with my friends. Well, we didn't call it hide-and-seek, though. We called it Ghost in the Graveyard. We broke into the local cemetery and played behind the gravestones. The person who was it was called the Ghost, and he would start out in the center of the graveyard. There was a large monument there that was placed at the grave of one of the richer people in town who had died quite a long time ago. We had no idea who he was, but he must have been loaded because that was a huge monument. The others would hide out behind the gravestones in the graveyard. We could use the entire cemetery, so there was plenty of room for us to hide. This meant that one round of the game could really last for a really long time. When the ghost found you, and he had to actually see you first, you had to run back to the monument in order to be safe. If you were caught, though, you didn't become it. We said that you died, but you just set out the next round. And the people who made it to the base would go out again. They were survivors. This would continue until everyone died, and then the last person to die got to pick who would be the ghost for the next round. When I was 16, we were playing a game of Ghost in the Graveyard on Halloween night. It was a very cold night, and I had to wear a jacket and even a pair of gloves. I was actually in a bit of a good mood because there's this girl named Angela who was playing with us, and, well, I was really interested in Angela. So, I was showing off a bit, and, running as fast as I can during the early rounds. I jumped over some high gravestones, trying to clear them pretty easily. I would then strut around the base, rubbing it in the nose of the ghost that he couldn't catch me. Looking back on it, I was acting like a complete dumbass, but I was hoping to get somewhere with Angela. Well, after about 4 rounds of the game, only me and one other guy were left uncaught. Angela had gotten killed in the first round, so she just remained on base and was able to watch me easily escape the ghost each time. There was no doubt in my mind, by the end of that night, that girl would want me bad. Well, during the 5th round, I went way out in the graveyard. I wanted to last as long as possible to really show off my hiding prowess. So I went over a hill, past some trees, and found a small tomb to crouch behind. It was a wonderful hiding place. The only bad thing about hiding there was that it was so cold outside that I was having trouble keeping myself warmed up. Although I was wearing my jacket and gloves, they weren't really thick, so I had to stand still, and I was shivering quite a bit. It took nearly 15 minutes before I finally heard the ghost approaching me. He wasn't very quiet, and the ground was covered in dry leaves, so I could hear him as he was getting nearer to me. Now, I know what you're thinking reading this. You'd think that I was not hearing the ghost and it was actually someone else. But that's not what was going on. I heard the ghost talking, trying to coax me out of my hiding place, and I knew the voice was the voice of my buddy who had failed to grab me all of the previous rounds. I tried moving into a position in which I could sprint more easily once he found me. Unfortunately, my movement caused a shuffling in the leaves, and I heard the noise of my buddy's feet stop. I cursed myself in my mind for giving away my position. I heard the footsteps begin again, and they were coming right toward me. My buddy was whistling at this point. I couldn't just run though, because the ghost had to spot you before you took off, which is why the element of surprise was so important in this game. I heard my breathing speed up, and I braced myself to jolt past the ghost right when he found me. He was getting closer. I heard him. I put up my hands and I was in a starting position. He was almost on me. I leaned forward. My buddy the ghost came around the side of the tomb, looked right past me, then turned and ran off. Completely confused, I turned around and I saw the most hideous woman I've ever seen sitting right behind the tomb, right beside me, and who knows how long she'd been there. I mean, she was fat and dirty with ratty hair, and her face was covered with, I don't know, bitch must have had herpes or something. She was nasty. "Hey, sexy!" she cried and grabbed my foot as I tried to bolt away. Screaming, I begged for the ghost to come back, but he wasn't about to. The lady had a good grip on my shoe, so I tried to shrug it off. Before I could do much, though, she actually grabbed onto the back of my pants, getting a handful of my belt, the waistband of my jeans, and even the waistband of my boxers. She was clawing at me and carrying on, but I didn't understand a word of it. I tried to pull away from her, but the bitch was strong. I tried kicking her, and when I looked back, I saw her holding a little fillet knife, and I nearly shit myself. Finally, having no other option than to try to escape this nasty witch who wanted who God knows what, undid my belt and zipper. She pulled my jeans and my boxers down to my ankles. She had a good hold on them, so they came down easy, but they were hard to get all the way off. Then I felt her cut my leg with a knife, and she told me, "I'm gonna cut it all off." And I finally freaked and kicked her in the face. The witch, my pants, and my underwear all came off in one fell swoop. Naked from the waist down and with only one shoe on, but not giving a shit, I ran as fast as I could. It hurt like hell on my feet, of course, and I was freezing well, you can easily figure out what I was freezing off as I ran back to the base. When I arrived, everyone was shocked to see me naked from the waist down. I was so scared that I didn't think to cover myself up at first, and remember how I told you it was very cold outside? Well, by the time I actually got covered up, everyone, including Angela, had seen the effects of the cold, and it's something I have not lived down to this very day. My nickname is LD. L stands for little. You can guess what the D stands for. I didn't see that old woman ever again, but it didn't matter. She did her damage. Hi everybody, this is Killer Orange Cat. It's been an absolutely amazing week since I uploaded my last True Stories video. I've gotten so many views and subscribers, it truly is boggling my mind. Plenty of you have had really nice things to say on my pages, and while it's getting hard to respond to every comment due to having a heavy workload as well, I do read every one of them, and so pleased that you're taking the time to tell me what you think of my work. I hope you enjoyed these 2 stories. I'll have more Halloween-themed stories in the coming week or 2, but I wanted to get a couple out right away. Now, I know the second one is a lot more comedy than horror, but after I read it, I had to include it in here, and some of the best horror is comedy-based. Now, lately, I know there's been a bit of controversy in the horror narration world, and I haven't addressed it because I don't truly feel it's my place to do that. I'm not only very new to the horror community on YouTube, but I've never narrated stories off Reddit, and although I'm well versed in copyright law, I feel that my commenting on it too much would seem like I'm trying to capitalize off that controversy, and that's not the kind of person I am. I want my channel to stand on its own and be watched for the stories and my narration, so I'm not really going to comment anymore on that. I also realize I have bit off a little more than I can chew with the Hyako Monogatari Kaidankai. I've gotten some quality stories from listeners, but nowhere near enough to complete the 100 Tales by Halloween. I'm going to write some of my own and look for others, but it's very possible I may not have this project completed by Halloween. If this is the case, I will continue to post more Kaidan after Halloween until the 100 Tale is posted, and I will think of some other special video to post for Halloween. Technically, Hyaku Monogatari Kaidankai has nothing to do with Halloween, so it won't seem weird to do it afterwards as well. Now, I've also had a few people asking about the orange cat I use in my videos, including the woman who submitted the first story. Just so you will know, if you're curious, his name is Ichigo, and my sister found him in the middle of the road during rush hour traffic about 3 or 4 years ago when he was less than 3 weeks old, to fit in the palm of your hand. And we just raised him up, and he's a big huge cat now. I got the idea for the channel name when he was wanting some food and I was eating and I was not going to give it to him. He gave me a dirty look like he wanted to kill me. And that's where Killer Orange Cat comes from. Other than that, I want to thank everyone who's listened or subscribed. I really enjoy trying to entertain others, and I hope that I have. And as always, you can check under your bed, and you can check in the closet. But even if you don't find anything, it doesn't matter, because as you're falling asleep, you'll realize you're never truly alone.